after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Ben Kruse. This is another episode. We are finally back. This is another episode of Moving the Goalposts. I know we're coming back from kind of a hiatus. We just had some issues with some of the co-host situations and things like that, schedules, and I was also doing Forever Power 5, which is a college football show, which you should all watch and listen to if you're into college football. And so that was a part of it. And we're going to be more consistent moving forward. So I just want to get that out of the way before we start. So I just want to say welcome to Moving the Goalposts for the first time in about 2 months. You can follow us across social media at MTGP ETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media. At ETB Network. That's on this show. You can follow us at MTGP ETB at Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and Moving the Goalposts on Facebook. Same thing with the ETB Network at ETB Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and Empty the Bench Network on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DMart. You can follow Ben Kruse on Twitter at Ben Kruse144. It's right there. And you can follow all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. And you can, where you can watch all the Empty the Bench shows. You can listen to all Empty the Bench podcasts on etbpodcast.com. And you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe. And of course, this show, Moving the Goalposts, is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Okay. So, all right, we are back, Ben. I don't know. What I can tell you is here's what I can tell you. I think you're probably having a better day than I am. And you're definitely having a better week than the Jets are right now. Jets lose. That's all I really need to put in that banner. Just Jets lose. The Jets are unraveling. They're unraveling before our eyes. Let me just say, regardless of who you are, and I can speak for myself with this, your biggest fears in life probably don't come true. Right? I think it's pretty safe to say your biggest fears in life probably don't come true. Whatever it is, no matter who you are, that's probably the case. Like you might fear some crazy thing happening to you on a daily basis, and it probably won't happen. I will say that's mostly true for me. None of my biggest fears have come true except this Jets season. This is the only time that my biggest fear has actually come true. I'm not a Net fan, but I am a Met fan. And the Mets, Jets, and Nets do have this one thing in common. There's one thing in common that the Mets, Jets, and Nets have is that in the past, they've made really big blockbuster moves for really big names that didn't work out. Here's how you know an era is bad. When the best day of that era is the start of that era. You know what I'm saying? Like, sort of like if the best day of the Max Scherzer Mets era was Max Scherzer going to the Mets, that's how you know it's it was a failure. Or the Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant era on the Nets, the best day then was when the Nets got Kyrie, Durant, and Harden. I know it was different days, but you get the point. The best part of that era was the day that they acquired the players. I fear that the same thing is going to happen with the Jets. Now, it did happen with the Mets a couple of years ago, but we kind of got past it a little bit. The greatest, so far, the best part of the Aaron Rodgers Jets era was when I got the news on my phone that Aaron Rodgers was going to the Jets. That's how you know it's a bad sign going forward. And there's so many things about, I hate the saying same old Jets because I don't believe in destiny really for sports teams. Like there's really no such thing as destiny. I don't think any particular franchise is destined for anything. It's just that they tend to have the same ownership and, which might make similar decisions or something is how I would put it. That's not destiny. That's just the same individuals involved. Like that's really all it, right? Like if you drink a lot and you get hungover, you're not destined to be hungover. You're just continuing to drink a lot. Like that. That's the reason you're getting hungover. That's how I view it with sports teams. So I don't view anything as destiny is how I would put it. But I will say this. If there ever was an actual argument for the Jets destined to be doomed, destiny to be doomed, this year has really been the best argument for it. Is how I would put it. It's been a frustrating season. And to be honest with you, I was more stressed about the year than I was looking forward to it over the summer. In July and August, if you were to ask me about how I feel about the Jets, I'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of excited about it. But to be honest with you, I'm probably more stressed. Because the thing is, the Jets can't tank. They can't tank. They're all in. They're all in on winning. They have to win. Tanking is not an option like it is with the Giants. Tanking is not an option. They're all in on Rodgers. They just got Devontae Adams. Hassan Reddick's coming back. They have to be all in. And all I can say is this season going sour is going to be a long and slow and painful process.
Yeah. In terms of myself, this is not me as a Jets fan. This is me as a Patriots fan. I kind of look at it from the other side of things. When you look at it, of course, you guys get Aaron Rodgers. Of course, he's getting up there in age. But when you bring in a Hall of Fame type of quarterback for a team that has been destined to need some type of hope, the Jets obviously needed that at this point in time. And then they obviously kind of the first couple of weeks, they crushed us. And, Aaron Rodgers obviously looked like he was potentially vintage coming back type of form. And, like the week after, you guys lost to Denver and that rain thing. It's just like, it's what it is, obviously it just was one of those type of days. But then you're kind of seeing it on it really as of right now. And the thing is, the Jets obviously fired Robert Saleh. Kind of very interesting timing. You guys brought in Aldridge, who was a defense corner with you guys. And then you guys brought in Devontae Adams, which was one of Aaron Rodgers' guys that he played with over in Green Bay. And the thing is about this overall move with Adams and Rodgers and this and that, you're kind of seeing, and obviously this is not me throwing Rodgers on the bus, but you feel like with him, every single type of thing after the game, I got to play better, or, he's not really throwing guys under the bus, but he made a comment about Mike Williams running a certain run route to lose the game against Buffalo a week or two ago. So it feels just like it's all coming together. And I just think for a lot of Jet fans, they were just so hopeful that things were going to be actually starting to come things together. And, I know that it's obviously a very long season, but they're 2-5, I'm pretty sure at this point in time right now. And I think no Jet fan, when you have all that talent, that's the biggest thing too. If you looked at this overall roster with Aaron Rodgers, you kind of see the overall talent around and be like, it's what it is. But when you have guys like Al Mazar, who's had his career highs right now in terms of the Jets and touchdowns. Devontae Adams is one of the best receivers in the game. You obviously brought him in. Mike Williams obviously is a 50-50 ball type of guy, but he just can't stay healthy. You guys have pieces, Breece Hall there. And then, of course, the Hassan Reddick stuff kind of off the field. I know that obviously a lot of Jet fans were, talking about that. He got a rework deal on Sunday, but it's just like, how can this all kind of work out together? That's the biggest thing that I think about. And I think for Jet fans, it's all about, well, is there any type of solution where we can kind of get this team kind of back on track? Because it's still early, but I think a lot of Jet fans are really starting to lose their patience in a way of like, all right, this is exactly the total opposite of what we were looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say 100% of it is surprising. Like, to be honest, like Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old. He showed signs of decline his last year at Green Bay. So it's not exactly a shock to, and by the way, the Jets offensive line, not very strong. And Aaron Rodgers is fairly mobile. So that affects him a lot more. It's not, and the truth is he's 41 years old now, I think.
Sounds right.
And, you know, quarterbacks historically have shown decline at his age. I mean, proof of this is Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, before he even turned 40, showed a steep decline. Like at the end of the 2014 season, Peyton Manning was terrible. And then in the 2015 season, right before he won the year he won the Super Bowl, he was so bad, he was benched for Brock Osweiler. And people forget that because he won a Super Bowl, but he was really, really bad that year. And Aaron Rodgers has declined less than that for sure. So the fact that he's showing signs of decline, especially after a terrible injury, is not a shock. It's just more like what happened was essentially the worst case scenario. It feels like. It really feels like it was the worst case scenario. It's like, all right, if I had told you the Jets will be 2-5 to start the season in August, we'd be, oh no, that's not good. That's really, really not good. Now, I'm not terribly shocked by it. I mean, it's a very Jets kind of thing. It's not surprising that Aaron Rodgers is not what he once was. But I will say, I mean, some of this stuff almost seems scripted. Like it seems, it's just so absurd. I mean, just 3 of these games, they should have been able to win.
Yep.
I would say. I mean, they should have beaten the Broncos. Losing to Denver is embarrassing. Greg Zuerlein, if he just makes a 51-yard field goal, the Jets win that game. Now, to be fair, the Broncos also missed a field goal earlier, the drive earlier, which was even easier. But I'm just saying, if Zuerlein makes that field goal, the Jets win that game. Denver is not a good team. You should be able to beat them. That's one right there. And the offense that game was totally stagnant. And Rodgers was also a little hurt at the end of the game. The Vikings, they should have been able to come back and beat the Vikings. That was just another one that they should have at least been able to win. The Bills, that game could have gone either way. I wouldn't say they should have won it, but the trajectory of the game was so crazy that like it could have gone so many different ways if Zuerlein makes a field goal here or there, or if Tyron Smith doesn't hold when Braylon Allen's practically in the end zone. The Jets could win that game. So and Pittsburgh, even though they lost by a lot, I mean, by the way, how do you give up because we didn't even talk about the game yet. We're just talking about the trajectory of the season. We didn't even talk about the game yet. The Jets gave up 31 unanswered points to Pittsburgh. How do you do that? I mean, Russell Wilson is a shell of himself. He's declined severely. Pittsburgh, they don't score points. They're not an offense that is remotely explosive. How do you do that? How do you give up 31 unanswered points to the Steelers, especially when defense is supposed to be the Jets' thing? What happened to this what happened to this elite Jets defense? Remember, we kept hearing about how elite the Jets defense was supposed to be? Well, what happened to fantasy? What happened to that? And how was it looking? Like, what happened to this elite Jets defense? And they're showing it. I mean, it's happening on both sides of the ball. I mean, they're showing it time and time again on the Jets defense. They were terrible. There is the pass rush for the Jets right now is putrid. The pass rush is terrible. The only thing the Jets didn't do against the Steelers was commit like really stupid penalties. They didn't do that. That's the only thing they kind of had going for them. They didn't commit any really stupid penalties. Other than that, they were terrible. I mean, Russell Wilson, the Steelers scored the more points against the Jets than they did against any other team this season. And the Jets are supposed to have a good defense. The only other team that came close was the Raiders, so they put up 32. Otherwise, the Steelers, they don't normally put up more than 3 touchdowns a game. And that was, and some of those balls were just like Russell Wilson was kind of throwing them up.
Yeah.
Like they weren't like great plays either. And by the way, I mean, just especially last week with the Bills, not to keep talking about the Bills, but like I couldn't think of better proof that the Jets needed a pass rusher than I mean, I thought that was just like this Jets pass rush has been terrible, and all of it's been bad. It's all been bad. Every single one of every single one of their defensive games has been bad. It's just, I mean, it's been bad on both sides of the ball. But I think the thing that's most frustrating about it is that this team is so talented. Like they're too talented to be this bad. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They're too talented to be this bad. And that game against Pittsburgh last night, that game went off the rails for no reason. For no reason at all. The Jets looked pretty good in the first half. And then there's like maybe within 2 minutes of within 2 minutes of the first half, the Jets are up 15-6. They're marching down the field, and all the Jets at that point should be careful not to screw anything up, and maybe you can go kick a field goal, but don't do anything stupid in that scenario. And what happens? Aaron Rodgers throws an interception. Now, to be fair, it wasn't a terrible throw. It was not a bad throw. It was a really good play by the defender. But it's like, why are you taking that type of risk in that situation? Like Aaron Rodgers should know not to be doing that. He's a veteran Hall of Fame quarterback. Like that was just such bad decision making. Such bad decision making. And that's where it all started. And then in the second half, when Aaron Rodgers hits Garrett Wilson, but like everybody wants to blame Aaron Rodgers, and I think he deserves some blame, but I think there's a lot of blame to go around. He hits Garrett Wilson in basically the shoulder pad. The shoulder pad, basically in the chest almost. And like it was a perfect throw. It was the typical behind the shoulder pass that the Jets have been doing a lot, which Aaron Rodgers is kind of known for. That's a perfect throw. Garrett Wilson is supposed to be the top target, or maybe now the second targeted receiver on the team, and he's supposed to be a superstar. I mean, I don't want to bash Garrett Wilson because he's a good player and everything, but like in these big spots, he's killed us. The same type of thing happened against Buffalo. I get it was a tough catch, but when we need him to make these plays, he doesn't do it. He doesn't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing so far with the Jets I've realized is, like you mentioned, they're too talented to be this overall bad, and it's just the crucial situations that you guys have been losing some of these games in. Man, of course, even the game against Minnesota and overseas, I mean, you guys are right there. Rodgers even threw 3 picks, and you guys had a chance to go down with, I think, 2 minutes left, and he had a really good drive going, and Mike Williams – first time actually out of 2 times during the season for your overall blame and losses. I don't know if he ran the wrong route or something like that, but they asked Rodgers essentially after the game in terms of what happened. Stephon Gilmore had a phenomenal interception there for his 3rd run of the game. The game ended that way. And then, of course, in the Bills game, Rodgers was trying to go deep and try to find Mike Williams. And apparently, I don't know if he slipped or something like that. But, Rodgers is trying to go deep. And by the way, Nick, I don't know if you've seen this, but Rodgers has thrown, I don't know if it's a career high interceptions when throwing plus 30 or whatever yards, but he has some type of crazy number where he's getting picked off a lot. A lot of the picks that he's been throwing have been a lot of deep balls. So part of me tells me, well, is it just him, that his overall age factor, or is it more the fact of just the overall communication with some of these guys? Because you never see that with Rodgers with his deep ball accuracy. At least in the past. So
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think it seems to be miscommunication. Like
that's it.
There is something not clicking with Aaron Rodgers and the receivers. Like maybe I'm shining too bright of a light on it because I'm watching all the games, but like it seems like the Jets receivers are running a lot of wrong routes. It seems like they're running a lot of the wrong routes, and more than normal. I mean, just you look at the Mike Williams play. I was at the game, the Jets-Bills game, and I actually, like when you're at the game, sometimes it's harder to tell what actually happened. And by the way, just to be talking about the wrong routes, now I kind of see why Aaron Rodgers wants all of his guys.
Yeah.
Like now I see kind of why he wants all of his teammates, because all these Jets receivers, they keep running the wrong routes. He's like, I got to bring my own guys in. It's happening a lot. It is happening a lot, it seems like. But yeah, I mean, Mike Williams has hardly done anything as a Jet. He's been pretty bad. He probably wants out, by the way. Like, since Aaron Rodgers publicly put him down, it seems like he probably, not just because Aaron Rodgers put him down, but just like how he feels about his place on the team. It wouldn't surprise me if he's looking to kind of get out. I mean, I was at the game and I actually thought maybe he caught it, because I couldn't tell that that Gilmore intercepted it, because from where I was sitting. So I thought, I was like, yes, they just have a chance. Williams caught it, and then I heard like then I just felt the stadium, the air get let out of the stadium. And then I realized, oh, that was an interception. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I mean, some of them are not his fault. I mean, some of them were just, like, you look at the Garrett. He's had 7 interceptions so far, and you look at one of them was the Garrett Wilson play, that interception. By the way, there was a play earlier where Xavier Gibson drops the punt.
Yep.
And that very easily could have given the Steelers a play in their own in the Jets' red zone.
Shut up. Yep.
And he was just lucky that it went out of bounds. So that was another thing that went terribly wrong. Another thing was Jeff Ulbrich threw the flag, the challenge flag, late, and the Jets happened to score a touchdown. But wouldn't that be the most Jets thing if Jeff Ulbrich had thrown the challenge flag?
They had an interesting commentary about that, by the way, in terms of like, well, that could have potentially saved the season for the Jets, essentially after the fact of that he didn't get the flag on the field in time, and instead they had the touchdown, and then I think they'll go for 2, I'm pretty sure, because
they ended up going for 2 because of the penalty.
Yeah, the penalty, which the special teamer coach on the Steelers was flipping out.
But the thing is that could have, the announcer wasn't wrong. That could have been the case.
No, it could have. Yeah,
that really could have been the case. But other than like pretty much all the games that the Jets could be winning and should be winning, they're not winning. The only one you can kind of argue is the Titans, and the Titans stink, and they were playing at home. So I mean, but yeah, they could have beaten some good teams. They could have beaten the Bills. They could have beaten Minnesota. And they should have even beaten Pittsburgh, but the game unraveled. The game went off the rails for the Jets for no reason at all, because they looked good in the first half. They looked good. They were driving the ball down the field, and then everything unraveled. And it's just been, their performance has just honestly, and I don't normally say this, has honestly just been unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
It's unacceptable to see a team perform this way when the goal really ultimately was the playoffs. Like, it was okay. It would have been okay if the Jets had made the playoffs and, even lost in the first round, possibly. We'd maybe be okay with that. They're not Super Bowl or bust or anything like that. But look, let's face it, they're in the weaker of the 2 conferences, and it looks like they're not going to make the playoffs. Just objectively, it's more likely than not that they won't make the playoffs. I'm not saying they can't. They can. But it doesn't seem very likely if they keep playing like this. It doesn't seem very likely. And yeah, I like the Devontae Adams move. I like the Hassan Reddick move. I'm glad that that Hassan Reddick's finally going to be playing. The Devontae Adams move was a good move just because there was no real downside to it. What did the Jets give up? A 3rd round pick,
even possibly a 4th. I saw
a 3rd. Well, it's a 3rd round pick that could become a 2nd round pick conditionally. Okay. And one of those prerequisites is the Jets have to play in the AFC Championship game, and Devontae Adams has to start, is what I think it is. So in that case, we'd be pretty happy about it.
Poor Devontae Adams, by the way, he faced the Steelers with the Raiders right before. He went over to face the Steelers again and lost in the exact same week with both of his teams. So that's really tough.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, look, when you look at the rest of the Jets season this year, when you look at the rest of the season, they do have a shot at making the playoffs. I'm not saying I think it's going to happen. Not because they're mathematically eliminated or anything like that. It's just like from the way they've been playing, I have no reason to believe that they're going to improve or, fix on these mistakes, especially consistently for the rest of the season. I mean, I will say the Jets do benefit from an easy schedule the rest of the way. They do. Their two toughest games are at home against Houston and on the road against Buffalo. Those are two teams.
Okay.
Two games they probably lose, but it just if I pull up the rest of the schedule, and by the way, even Houston, I think is at least even Houston, I think is a winnable game.
We played Houston already, and we were legitimately at the game at halftime. We were literally right there. Like I know that obviously on Football Forecast, and I don't, we don't call it the rail, but you talked about how that Houston isn't as good as people make them out to be. And like I definitely could see it because there definitely is some stuff there. It's just like they're good, but like, all right, pump the brakes a little bit. Like I don't think that they're on Kansas City's level. I don't think that they're on Baltimore's level. They're essentially just kind of on that tier below, and they essentially, they still got to prove themselves.
Yeah, and they do occasionally have some like clunkers. They do occasionally have some really bad games. Although they did just beat Buffalo, although I don't think they're as good as Buffalo. So the Jets' schedule for the rest of the season is the Patriots on the road, at home against the Texans, on the road against the Cardinals, at home against the Colts and the Seahawks, on the road against the Dolphins and the Jaguars, at home against the Rams, on the road against the Bills, and at home against the Dolphins. Assuming Tua's not coming back, which I think is safe to assume, all those games are winnable except the Bills on the road. And the Texans are going to be a tough game too. And the Cardinals might even be tougher than you think. And Seattle might be tough, but the point is all those games are winnable. All those games are at least winnable. The problem is the Jets aren't winning winnable games. That's their problem. They're not winning games that are winnable. And I have no reason to believe that they're going to start after losing. I have no reason to believe that that's going to start to happen after Halloween. Like, I have no reason to believe that. I mean, a lot of teams, it is true that a lot of teams have sort of taken a nap through, September and October. A lot of teams have done that. And then post-Thanksgiving, they turn everything on. A lot of Aaron Rodgers and Packers and Russell Wilson Seahawks teams have done that, notably. So that's always happened. But this feels different. This feels significantly different. And it just sort of feels like the Jets continually make stupid mistakes. And they continually lose these games. I have no reason to believe anything is going to change. No reason to believe that. I remember last week I probably would have said, look, the Jets have a real shot. The AFC is weak this year. Outside of the division winners, every other team is sort of suspect. Like, we don't really know. You got the Bengals who are 2-4. Yeah, you have the Steelers who are 5-2, but they're really not that good. And you have the Chargers, and we don't know about them. And it's just sort of like, I'm looking at all these teams like, yeah, all of this is able to happen. Like, I agree. All of this is able to happen. Like, the Jets can do all of this. But the point I'm making is they're not going to. Like, they couldn't even beat Denver. I don't know how good they're going to be the rest of the year. And it's just like the Mets and the Jets played at the same time last night. And I was watching both games on two different TVs at the same time. And I was more nervous about the Jets than I was about the Mets. I really was. Because the Mets losing to the Dodgers in the ALCS, and the Dodgers are like a super team in baseball right now. They're kind of like the 2017 Golden State Warriors of baseball.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I can live with the Mets losing to the Dodgers in 6 games.
Yeah.
I can live with that, especially from how the season went this year. But the Jets, I cannot live with this. I cannot live with this season going off the rails because it is going to be a slow and painful process.
Yeah, and the thing really quick, Nick, that I wanted to ask you is like, how were, obviously a tough time like this with a ton of expectations, like how are the players kind of reacting to this, like after games are over, like in terms of like last night, right? You guys, like you mentioned, they had a really good start to the game. They had really a lot of the control in the first half, and then things just going completely off the rails. Aaron Rodgers is obviously kind of the guy that kind of leads everything, but the accountability factor, in terms of just making sure everybody's on the same page. Do you feel like that's, kind of something right now that the players just aren't buying into? Or do you think that they're still trying to figure out, like, what the hell is going on?
You're saying accountability factor in terms of Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I mean, he's going to be kind of the alpha about it because he's really kind of the start on the offense, but just
Yeah.
the overall accountability from every single part, the offense, the defense, just where do you think it kind of lies?
I mean, I don't know, but it sounds like you're getting at coaching. It
Yeah,
sounds like you're kind of getting at coaching, and it
yeah,
seems to me that the coaching is very bad. I mean, all of these, of all the teams in the NFL, the one team that seems to be the worst in terms of coaching is the Jets. Just in terms of how everything has went. A
yeah.
lot of it, so much of it comes down to coaching. Not all of
Mhm.
it. Garrett Wilson dropping an easy pass is not coaching and things
Yeah.
like that. There are certain things that are not about coaching. But yeah, I think a lot of it is about coaching. I mean, giving up 31 on being just a really bad second half team in some cases. That comes down to coaching. Bad offense, poor discipline, constant penalties, offensive line playing terribly, even with a Hall of Fame left tackle. Tyron Smith is a Hall of Fame left tackle. He's been terrible.
Mm.
The offensive line just not syncing is coaching. So much of this seems to be about coaching.
Well, look, really quickly, you were talking about coaching. Aldrich was supposed to be a defensive coordinator. So essentially, what's the defense doing? It doesn't feel like specifically the defense is
Yeah,
getting better with him under. I know he's only had a couple of games, but to give up that amount of unanswered points against a quarterback who, by the way, has only played in one game. I know Russell Wilson's
yeah,
obviously a name out there, but he's not the same type of Russell Wilson that we remember from like the Seattle days. Remember last year, people were booing him to get off the field left and right. And
yeah,
we even saw that last night. Early on in the game, Steeler fans are just like, you saw pictures on the sideline of Justin Fields starting to throw this and that. But no, Russell Wilson apparently took that personally, and instead he decided to put on one of the best performances against the Jets defense, which kind of come into the season, we pretty much expected a ton more of. With the secondary of Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed on the outside, the two Williams guys in the front. Me as a Patriot fan myself, like I was expecting a ton from this Jets defense, and for some odd reason, they're just getting moved around left and right. I mean, I know in that first game against the Niners, you can understand, well, that's the 49ers, but
yeah.
like they're getting just a ton of big plays, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, that's the Jets defense we were all talking about.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. I mean, you're talking about Jeff Ulbrich being a defensive coordinator. I mean, the problem with Jeff Ulbrich being the head coach is that he's not a head coach. He's a coordinator, just like Saleh.
Right.
Saleh was
Yeah.
a defensive coordinator, not a head coach. And I think Jeff Ulbrich fits that description even more than Saleh does. The Jets essentially don't have a head coach. Jeff Ulbrich is not going to win the starting head the position. There's almost no way, barring some miracle, that he's going to. And
Right.
yeah, he's a coordinator. The Jets have a defensive coordinator as their head coach, which is obviously a problem. It's obviously going to be a problem. Like you need some. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett is terrible, and they had to demote him. It's the coaching. Really, I think a lot of this comes down to the coaching. I think with a decent head coach, the Jets could be 5-2 right now. They could be 5-2 right now if they actually have a decent head coach. And that seems to be their downfall. I think coaching really is a big part of their downfall. So we can talk about your team a little bit.
Sure.
Actually, I do want to. We will in a little bit. We just have to talk a bit about the Mets too. The Mets, they lose in the NLCS to the Dodgers in Game 6. I was hoping maybe there would be a Game 7. That didn't happen. And I'll say it was a great year for the Mets. The thing with this game is that I sort of accepted that we were going to lose at some point, probably in the 5th inning, probably even earlier when Mendoza put Diaz in the game in the 4th inning. I was like, yeah, this is not going to end well. Diaz does not go in the 4th inning. So I knew when they like Manaea, he pitched 2 innings. He couldn't even get an out in the 3rd. It was a tough day for Manaea. And the Dodgers, I think, are just too good. I think the Dodgers are just too good. Like I said before, they're the 2017 Golden State Warriors of baseball teams. There's only so much the Mets could have done, and the Dodgers are just too good. I have to accept this, to be honest. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. I'm very sad about it, that the season is over, that this phenomenal season is over. But I can't be mad at the Mets the way I am at the Jets. I'm not going to say unacceptable performance losing to the Dodgers in 6 games. I just can't feel that way, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, really just quickly as a whole with the Mets, Nick, you definitely should be proud and really just of like, they reminded me, I mean, I was myself a Red Sox fan, the 2021 Red Sox, in terms of a season where it was not a ton of expectations. I mean, they had a promising type of team coming with them, but they got into the playoffs. They beat the Yankees in a winner-take-all game in the playoffs, kind of like with the Mets in terms of that wild card series against the Brewers. And then they just kind of just rode with the hot, like, team of destiny type of feel hand. The Red Sox got pretty much deep into that overall playoffs because of their offense. They were just hitting the ball like crazy. I mean, their pitching was okay, kind of like the Mets. Like, they had some guys here and there, but it was really their offense. And then, they got to Houston, and they had really a good couple of games early on in that series. And like, oh my God, like, is this actually really going to happen? And then the second half of that series, I'm like, try to remember myself. Well, it's the Astros. And like, they were just, obviously rolling high that second half, and our offense just completely kind of fell apart, and our pitching was just doing their thing. So I'm just thinking to myself, I'm just like, they're only a couple wins away from going to the World Series in 2021. But it's like, I can't look at it and be like, well, I was just unsuccessful, kind of looking at the big picture. That kind of reminded me of the Mets this year. The Mets, we have to take into account, they're 0-4 to start the year. The Jorge Lopez situation in terms of calling out the team, I think that was the second month of the season where there's exactly no fans out in the seats. And then it turns into the, oh my God, the Grimace situation, the story. Essentially, the Mets went into that massive hot run in that second half. They found themselves in a winner-take-all series after the hurricane happened in Atlanta. And they were just right there, and they found a way with Francisco Lindor having some heroics. Think about this, Nick, and this is one thing I really, applaud you guys about the Mets, is they were barely at home a lot in that mid part where they had to win a lot of these games. They had to go from, like, Atlanta to Milwaukee, back to Atlanta, and like a doubleheader for a winner-take-all to get even to the playoffs. And Francisco Lindor in that first game, Diaz, of course, blew in the 8th. And then Lindor came up and obviously showed potentially why, outside of Ohtani, why he could be an MVP type of candidate with that go-ahead home run. Mets make the playoffs after that. This second game really didn't mean anything. And then the Brewers series, the Mets won the first one. They lose the second one in heartbreak fashion. The third one looked like, the season was going to be over. But instead, Pete Alonso,
that was magical,
who was getting scrutinized left and right. People were saying this is going to be his last at best in New York Met against one of the best closers in the game in Devin Williams with 2 outs in the top of the 9th inning. And instead, Pete Alonso decided to say, well, our magical ride's not ending. He hits a go-ahead 3-run home run. The Mets finish off in that bottom half and get to the National League Division Series to take on the Phillies, who, by the way, were just in the National League Championship Series last year and a potential favorite to go to the World Series this year. Instead, the Mets decided to go in the National League Division Series to beat the Phillies and really beat them like pretty single-handedly. I mean, I think for the most part, the Phillies, they had some moments, but I thought the Mets really just took it to them. Yeah. And then they got themselves to the championship series, Nick. You just got to think about it, that the Mets made it to the NLCS and what pretty much was looking at for most people as a down year, like kind of a rebuilding type of year, and they got to that. So that only tells me something, that Steve Cohen and David Stearns is his first overall year there with the Mets, is you guys are doing something the right way. So when you're talking about the Mets and the Jets, the Mets are definitely starting to build a foundation where now they can get some pieces in and really kind of create something special there.
Not to mention Carlos Mendoza.
Carlos Mendoza too. So much fun. We obviously talked about the coaching with the Jets side. He was a fantastic hire, I thought, from the jump. And of course, he got kind of scrutinized early on in the season, but he was able to kind of get things around that second half and get that team not only to the playoffs, but go deep into the playoffs and go with 2 wins away from making the World Series. I mean, you talk about this, Nick, what a magical ride you guys had. And, hopefully that you guys keep the overall magical stuff going there, because that was definitely a fun run for you guys.
Yeah, well, there were so many aspects to it. I mean, when the Mets beat the Brewers, I mean, first of all, the fact that we even made the playoffs, if you had told me in late August I would not have. I did not think the Mets were going to make the playoffs. I would have said,
No.
yeah, maybe we could, but it's a long shot. It kind of similar to how
We talked about it too. Remember? I think it was like
I think we did talk about it on this show actually, and I said the Mets are not going to make the playoffs.
Did I say it? I don't know if I said it they were going to make it or not, but
I don't know if I don't remember what you said, but I know I said it. I said we're not going to make the playoffs, and I clipped it, and it's on our social media. So yes, I did say the Mets are not going to make the playoffs when all is said and done. It didn't feel like they could. It just didn't feel possible at that point. I thought the Braves were too good, and they almost didn't. The thing is, they almost didn't. They almost didn't make the playoffs, and I was so worried going in on that Monday about making.
Oh my God.
About making the playoffs, because I work overnight, so I couldn't really watch the first game. Then I woke up, and usually when I wake up to find out news about my teams, it's usually not good. Like I wake up usually to concerning text messages. I'm like, oh no, this can't be good. That usually does not happen. But I woke up to good news for once. I mean, there were a few just magical moments. I mean, Alonso hitting that home run against the Brewers was incredible.
Oh my God.
I was out. I was watching it on my phone, and I screamed. I just yelled, "Oh my God!"
No, figuratively, literally. Oh my God!
Oh my God! And I because I couldn't believe it. You saw, if you look at the probability rating that they show on ESPN in the game, it was 91% Brewers, 9% Mets. 91% Brewers, 91% chance the Brewers were going to win, and the Mets were a buzzsaw to the Phillies. That series wasn't even really close. I wish I was. I mean, the Lindor Grand Slam, I wasn't at that game. I was at the game before.
Oh, wow.
But the Lindor Grand Slam, that gave me chills. It was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just, not just like watching it on TV, but if you look at the play with the stadium noise, it was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. I think the reason, honestly, just to talk about the games, like, the thing with the Dodgers is they have amazing plate discipline is one thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like they don't chase. The Phillies, they swing at everything. That's the difference. And that was especially a problem with Quintana, because Jose Quintana does not throw strikes. He gets hitters to chase. And the Dodgers do not chase. That's the big, and they also just are a superstar driven team.
Yeah,
they just have so many superstars. There was only so much the Mets could do. But
a lot of those stars are smart too, because they've obviously seen a ton of stuff. And exactly like you're mentioning. Sorry to cut you off there, but Quintana and Manai is obviously your guys' ace. So it was a bunch of guys specifically that had a lot of promising stuff, but it was really hard to translate from having one lineup in the Phillies, which was chasing a lot, to a lineup that is completely star-driven, that is completely patient. So they were trying to essentially put that same exact type of strategy from that team to the other team, and just didn't work out.
I also thought it was so bizarre how the games all seemed to be blowouts.
Yeah.
All of the games were blowouts. They were
Crazy.
all blowouts. Even the games that the Mets won. I'm just, I guess we can hold our heads high, but it does kind of suck that within a span of 24 hours, I went from within a span of 3 hours, I went from rooting for the Mets and the Jets to actually still be alive to, all right, let's move on to the Knicks. That's what it was. Just move on to the Knicks. And, maybe we're going to start this process all over again. All right. So I do want to talk a little bit about some of this. Yankee, I do want to mention this actually. Yankees go to the World Series for the first time in 15 years. Yeah, I know you're a Yankee hater. For the first
I don't
time
hate them, but
15 years. They were just, they were too good for the Guardians, is how I would put it. They were just too good. I don't know how much of the game you watched on Friday night.
Yep.
That could have gone badly, that game. That game could have gone badly.
I will say this, and I was texting my guy Ryan, who we do Hitting for the Cycle with, Ryan Tui. We do Hitting for the Cycle with. He's a diehard Yankee fan. And, I was saying the first couple of games, with the way that the Guardians were looking, I'm like, oh, this is not going to be pretty for them. It seems like, because the first two games are just controlling everything. The Guardians were falling behind a lot early on these games. And I'm just like, this is not going to even be competitive. Like, I just want to see something at least competitive, especially in the ALCS. I know with the NLCS games kind of being non-competitive, really, and most of them are blowouts. I'm like, it's the championship games. Can you give me some competitive baseball? And at least in these series, when I went back to Cleveland, of course, with the Kruse Noel, aka Big Christmas, which I had no idea he had that nickname, by the way, until they announced it by Brian Anderson, which, by the way, that was a fantastic call that he had on that game time home run. And then David Fry hitting that walk-off. I knew the Guardians still weren't going to win that series, but I'm like, hopefully they get at least that moment there. And they at least made it close. And then the next game after, I'm pretty sure they had a good start to the game, but the Yankees took the lead. And then Clay Holmes came in. That's right. Clay Holmes came in and absolutely spit the bit in the 7th inning. But the Yankees came back. And Emmanuel Clase, Nick, who, by the way, is looked at as RKA one of the greatest pitchers, closers in the game. The Yankees somehow, I don't know what type of magic it was, because this guy is absolutely disgusting. But the Yankees were able to hit him like it was nobody else's business. They were just – sometimes you just can be able to read guys right away. And people are like, well, was he tipping? Was something going on there? I just think that they can really hit him well. And there's been, in the past couple of years, they've been able to hit Class A well. So it didn't really shock me. But, yeah, the Guardians were able to get a couple of guys on in that game Game 4, and they never were able to against Tommy Kahnle, they weren't able to get those runs back in. So the Yankees were able to win that one. And then the Juan Soto game. A lot of people, the Yankee fans, are like, well, Juan Soto, of course, has been great, but he hasn't had that breakout moment yet. And I thought to myself, when it went into extra innings, Juan Soto was up, which, by the way, there was a base open, and Hunter Gaddis did not decide to just pitch around him and go for Jazz Chisholm, who wasn't great in this overall postseason. They decided to go after Juan Soto, 2 guys on. Obviously, the guy beforehand bobbles the ball at Brian Rocchio, and I'm just like, oh, this is going to be it. This is going to be it for the Guardians. They had their chance, and Rocchio drops the ball. Soto comes up to the plate because you have the bottom of the order coming to start that inning. They didn't get a lot of that on. Wells walked. Rocchio had the drop ball on the double play attempt by Verdugo. So instead of 2 outs, I think, or at least one of them out, there was 1 out, 2 guys on for Soto, and he works like a 10-pitch at bat. He was not in the pitch left and right, just like a death stare almost. And I'm thinking to myself, crap. He essentially, if there's one pitch that could become like a high fastball or whatever, I could see this going out. And lo and behold, that next thing after I say it, he whacks it to deep center. And I thought to myself, oh, it looks like it's going to go right under it. Like the guy in center field is going to get right under it because, of course, the wind and stuff. Ball kept carrying, and just like, well, that's it. And Juan Soto, essentially, that's why he paid the big bucks for all these guys. And, I'm not surprised the Yankees are
They're going to write
on that series.
It's going to be unbelievable seeing Soto's next contract.
Speaking of course, yeah. I mean, of course, a lot of Met fans, of course, are talking about that. Of course, their offseason about Soto, this and that. But yeah, I mean, this guy, man, as a Red Sox fan, I'm born to hate the Yankees, but like I also can grow to respect them. And this has been a team that has not been back in 15 years. And of course, people say it was an easy path. I'm not going to obviously go through that, but they beat 2 teams, 1 team with a really good overall rotation, and a second team in the Guards that's really pesky type of team. So, you got to get there to get there. You play who you play. And now you're going to be facing the Dodgers with Judge and Ohtani. I mean, Nick, obviously we don't have to go through that whole entire World Series, but talk about just the ratings and everything specifically. This is going to feel like just
the ratings are going to be through the roof. I mean, these are the 2 premier brands right now, the Dodgers and Yankees. First of all, it's New York versus LA. The league always wants New York versus LA. That's always just a ratings gravy train. If it's New York versus LA. And it's also like they were the 2 favorites. They were the 2 favorites, and they both have a ton of superstars. I think the World Series ratings are going to be incredible. They're going to be very, very high. I think it starts Friday.
Yep. Saturday are games 1 and 2.
I mean, I don't think I watched any of last year's World Series at all.
I watched bits and pieces, but like I see people on social media bitching about like, oh, you got the 2 like $1 billion type of teams in this one, but it's just like, well, aren't you want to grow the game and this and that, and people are complaining about last year's not giving enough overall juice. So then why are you bitching? Essentially, you don't have to watch it if you don't want to. Yeah. This is essentially going to be the World Series, whether you like it or not. I mean, I'm looking at it, listen, do I hate that the Yankees are in it? Sure. Do I obviously respect it? Sure, of course, because I want to see real good baseball. And I know for a fact that I know all these games are going to be close, hopefully, knock on wood. And you have the star players in terms of baseball trying to get their game back, I guess, because for so many years they were saying it was a dead type of sport,
Which
which
I
me
don't
to
think
this
is
day.
true. I'm not
I
even
don't
the
think it's
biggest.
true.
I'm not even the biggest baseball fan, to be honest, anymore, or at least regular season baseball. But it's just like that's just not
Come on.
really true.
Yeah.
In certain localities, baseball is huge. New
Mhm.
York and Boston, our markets, namely, baseball
Oh
is
yeah.
still very, very big.
Mhm.
Local baseball is probably even bigger than local football in New York. Um,
Mhm.
Baseball is that big. Yeah, and the playoffs have been great. The playoffs have just
Yeah.
been great. I do want to move on to the NFL a little bit more. Your Jags, your Pats lose to the Jags. It's okay. It
Uh,
was a home game for the Jags.
yep.
Um, the London Jaguars end up beating the
Yeah.
Patriots. I think I said at one point this season for the Patriots is going to be a growing pain. Like there won't be some growing pains. This season is the growing pain. I guess is how I would put it. You know what's bad when you lose to the Jags?
Mm. And you know when it's bad when you're getting blown out by the
Yeah.
Jags.
But they were winning at one point. They were winning
It
early
was
in the game.
when you were talking about the Jets game, I was thinking to myself, well, that feels like it was a microcosm of the Patriots game because
Yeah.
the Patriots actually got up to a lead. They got up to a 10-0 lead, and the Jaguars. I mean, that was the long pass that Lawrence made to Brian Thomas Jr., who, by the way, is an absolute stud. If you haven't been able to see this kid, I know he's obviously on the Jaguars, but he is blossoming before our eyes. So they definitely have something going over there. But Nick, I really wasn't worried about much of the defense as you're kind of coming to the season more than the offense. And I know that obviously Jacoby Brissett, I wasn't really expecting a ton of, especially the offensive line and the weapons around him. But people were kind of saying about Drake May, of course, his first game playing a vaunted Houston team, and if debating on if he should be able to play at all this year. But a lot of people are saying that for Drake May. And I know it's only 2 games, and I know it's really kind of hard to depict in terms of how he's been this and that. But the reason why right now I'm still like every single week I'm excited to watch the Patriots is maybe it's because we have something in Drake May. I know like last year, like no offense to Mac Jones and a bunch of other guys, but it's like every other week. And maybe it's just because I was spoiled for so long of like just phenomenal quarterback play. That it's just like, well, I have to watch this crap again, this and that, and that's what it is. But I don't care specifically about the wins or losses this year. I care about specifically, can we have something for down the road? And I think that Drake May has something there to me, at least so far. In 2 games, I mean, heck, he eclipsed the touchdown passing for our quarterbacks in 1 game over Jacoby Brissett in 5 games. That pretty much should tell you everything. No offense to Jacoby, because I love Jacoby, but he's a journeyman backup, and that's that. But I really like Drake a lot. I think that this kid definitely still has a lot of work to be done for sure. But imagine he could be able to get some guys around him on the offensive line and get some pieces around. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be. A lot of people are kind of comparing him to like the Josh Allen kind of tier. I think that he could maybe give potentially like a Justin Herbert possibly feel because he has an absolute cannon of an arm. We already
Yeah,
can kind of see that he could kill with the arm, and we haven't really been seeing a quarterback, at least for us, that has had that ability in actually a while. I mean, Talon obviously had a very good arm, but it wasn't like, he was able to kind of, do other things, win by other ways with his quarterback play. Drake can really just throw the deep ball, which is absolutely fun to see. With weapons are very average, and he's been able to do really well with that so far. So, yeah, I mean the defense, it's an absolute train wreck. I don't even know where to start with it. Like we said off the year, the Jaguars ran 17 straight plays. 17. I mean, you would think at least maybe after the fifth play of the run, the 10th, even the 10th play, but the 17th, it's like, all right, they're clearly just bullying basically the
yeah,
line that we have on the other side. And it's like, all right, we're gonna just keep on doing it, and there's nothing you could do about it. It's pretty much when you're going up to a friend and you're just like, yeah, well, I'm gonna keep betting the same exact team, and there's nothing you could do about it because I keep on winning. That's essentially what the Jags were doing. I'm going to keep on doing the same exact type of play, and there's nothing you can do about it. So the Pats defense is an absolute mess, and it just sucks because they had a ton of promise, and maybe it gets better throughout the season. Um, But yeah, it's been a tough year. I mean, I know that obviously I really wasn't expecting a ton this year, but the one type of hope that I do have compared to past years is so far the quarterback play at Drake May, and hopefully it continues.
Yeah, well, I always find it funny when people like. I always find it funny when quarterbacks are always like constantly compared to other quarterbacks, like
Right.
like when they're drafted, when we don't really know much about them yet at all. We don't know that much about Drake May, and everybody's trying to compare him to Josh Allen. I mean,
Yeah.
look, but it is true. He does have a very good arm, and there could be a lot of potential. It's just not right now.
Right. Right.
Like he can only do so much right now. By the way, Josh Allen wasn't great his first year either. Um,
Mhm.
some more NFL news. Deshaun Watson and Brandon Ayuk both out for the year. I think this is more significant for the Niners than it is for the Browns. The Browns were terrible with Deshaun Watson anyway. Um,
Yeah.
it just, yeah, I guess we're now in the injury phase of the season. I think this could be very significant for the Niners because their division is more competitive, though they'll probably win it anyway. But the NFC is way more competitive, and losing Ayuk, that could be really bad for the Niners. Just in the postseason this year.
Yeah, the Niners, I mean, of course, and Debo's obviously dealing with some stuff out the field. Prayers to him because that could be potentially serious. But Ayuk just being down for the year, especially with the kind of stuff off the field he had this overall offseason and some of the drops that he had for a guy that had a ton of promise for so many years. It just felt like everything just kind of went to what this year for him. So it just sucks for him and it sucks for the Niners offense because they're better with him offensively in that lineup. And now they're going to be without him. So other guys are going to have to step up. For Deshaun Watson, I know that obviously people have had some very interesting comments about this because yes, I hate to have injuries happen. I don't want any injuries to specifically happen whatsoever. And it sucks obviously for what happened to Deshaun Watson. But of course, the people on social media and of course the stuff that Jameis Winston and a bunch of other people said, I don't really want to go to the overall conversation because of course a ton of stuff has been going on with this overall thing. But all I will say is Deshaun Watson, of course, going down, regardless if he was in or regardless of where he's out, the Browns as a whole are going to have an awful and a tough year ahead of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was true no matter what. And I think some Browns fans actually cheered it. This has to be. I mean, I would never cheer an injury.
Yeah.
I would never cheer an injury. But I don't know if you saw Myles Garrett's response. He said he's been a model citizen throughout college and most of the pros.
Oh my God.
Yeah, keyword most. Keyword most of the pros.
Yeah. Yikes.
Even that I don't think is even true, by the way.
I mean, I understand standing up for your teammate, but
yeah, it was just funny.
On.
I thought.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that, but just him
come
saying
on.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this has to be. It might be the worst contract in the history of sports. The Deshaun Watson contract.
Oh, it's up there.
They can't even get rid of it. There's no way they're even gonna be able to get rid of it. It's gonna set the franchise back decades, basically. And I mean, his career post 2021 just totally fell off. Totally fell off.
It's crazy.
And I thought he was a really good player at one point.
Yeah.
I really thought he was.
He was before Burrow and Stroud and yeah. He was of course highly recruited in college from Clemson. And then when you looked at kind of the early three of Mahomes and Deshaun and Lamar, those are kind of the core three, at least for a while, at least kind of early on. And then Deshaun, of course, had this stuff off the field. And then, of course, I understood the rust and stuff kind of after he kind of came out of the situation. But I just never saw a guy that completely just, especially even though pieces around him, just looked this bad. And it's not you can kind of obviously kind of make it maybe a season or two. But it's every single year, the drop off keeps on dropping with this overall guy. And now everything with him, just his overall confidence is shot. He can't run like he used to. And he can't throw anymore with accuracy. Everything specifically that he had is pretty much all gone.
Yeah, I think the Browns fans might actually be in a worse position than Jet fans.
That could be it.
In fact, it's actually very similar. Both are very frustrated with our football teams, and our baseball teams just got eliminated. So if you think about it, and both are fans of, like, if you think about like the average, like most Jet fans are Met fans, most Browns fans or Guardians fans, and are also Cavs fans, and most Met and Jet fans also are Knick fans or maybe Net fans. All of us are in a similar position if you think about it, because we also root for basketball teams that are in similar sort of positions.
Yeah,
so I guess
so.
Now we're all moving on to our basketball teams that are probably
no wonder why you guys play each other a lot now.
Yeah, so I guess the Cleveland fan
sense.
and the Met Jet Knick fan are just very similar in similar positions right now.
Yeah.
I guess that's how I would say. And by the way, Baker Mayfield, so much better than Deshaun Watson. It's not even close.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
you talk about Baker, a journeyman guy that, of course, had a ton of problems out of college, and he couldn't find a job forever. And now, essentially, he found a job last year with the Rams for a little bit, and now he's just completely found his home with Tampa Bay, and he's skyrocketing now. Like, he used to be somebody that was, I wouldn't say awful, but he just was kind of a up and down type of guy. I'm not putting at Baker in like the elite level per se,
great,
because that's obviously
great.
But yeah, great college quarterback, and now like he's solid. That's essentially what I'll give him. He's a solid quarterback.
Yeah. I also I also want to get into the college games a little bit. Alabama loses to Tennessee. I think this has. I mean, I talked about it on Forever Power 5 last week, but Alabama this year has really, really fallen off. Post Nick Saban, Alabama has really fallen off. And by the way, let me be clear. I think Tennessee has also really fallen off this year. Well, not fallen off, but like they've been disappointing because they weren't great last year, but they fell off during this year is how I would put it. Tennessee's offense Tennessee looked really bad against SEC teams. By the way, they looked really bad for all SEC games in all their SEC games except the second half against Alabama. The second half against Alabama, late in the third quarter, Tennessee finally turned it on. And Alabama, they're not this year. And I'm not saying Kalen DeBoer is going to do a bad job. I don't think he's going to do a bad job. But they've really fallen off post Saban. This happened. They lost to Vanderbilt. They gave up 19 unanswered points to South Carolina. They almost lost to South Carolina, and then they lose to Tennessee. That's 3 weeks in a row. Alabama has not looked good. They played one good half in the SEC this year, basically. They played a good half against Georgia. They played phenomenal then. And now against Tennessee, they lose to Vanderbilt. They almost lose to South Carolina, and then they lose to Tennessee. My thinking is it's going to be very tough for them to make the playoffs. Even if they win out, it's going to be tough. I still think they can. But it's going to be tough. I think the problem with Alabama this year is that Jalen Milroe has to play a great game, a really good game for them to win, for them to look solid, because their defense is not good. And another, which is a problem, because if a team is good, their quarterback shouldn't have to be great in order to win.
Right.
Like in college football, I mean, Carson Beck doesn't have to play a great game which, by the way, against Texas, he didn't play a great game.
Something about with me with Carson Beck, and I don't know if it's just I haven't seen enough of him, but he kind of I'm not saying he gives him that JJ McCarthy type of vibe, but like it's something with him potentially where he potentially is the product of the system, because like I think that he could play decent. But like if you take essentially him away from an overall team that might not have as great of a defense like Georgia does, how even good is he more kind of within the overall system and he's just playing well?
I think a lot of college quarterbacks fit that description.
True, sure, yeah.
I mean, J.J. McCarthy kind of does too, but if you look at Michigan this year, it's like, well, maybe J.J. McCarthy was pretty good because the quarterback situation in Michigan now is really bad.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. No, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and it's just like Alabama, like the thing with Alabama is Jalen Milroe's got to play a good game, got to play a really good game in order for them to win. And that's just a recipe for disaster. The second is their defense stinks. Their defense is terrible. They're supposed to be a good defensive team. On one side of the ball, they're really, really not good. And the other thing is they just seem to be a really bad second half team. They seem to be really, really bad in the second half. Consistently, this keeps happening, that they're bad in the second half. You can't play one half of football. So there's so much with Alabama that's going wrong right now, similar to the Jets in a way. Like, so much of this stuff is going wrong to the point where I don't really know if they're a playoff team anymore. I don't know. I'm not even really convinced they're much better than LSU or Ole Miss from the way they've been playing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like you mentioned with Miller, I think Miller has a ton of ability. I do think that there is some raw factor with him in terms of his accuracy. He threw a interception at the end that pretty much they were down 24. I think it was 24-17, and he made a pass at the end of the interception that I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, like you don't essentially have to be hero ball into one play. And sometimes with him, he tries to do that. He tries to get ahead of himself. Sometimes with college quarterbacks, that happens that way. But and I know you obviously mentioned like this is not the same Nick Saban type of team that we obviously once know. But even with the end of Nick Saban type of years too, they got like a lot of their wins were close. Like
Yeah.
they used to be a team that used to blow
That could
teams
be
out a lot
coaching.
more.
That could be coaching.
And now you're kind of seeing it now without Saban, in which they're kind of starting to crack up a little bit, a lot more. Their defense, like you mentioned, has given them a ton of yards. I mean, South Carolina, I remember South Carolina several years ago was absolutely brutal. Like as a team, they're just awful. And you essentially are supposed to be one of the best overall college programs, which you are for a long time. But to have South Carolina team that was legitimately out of being good for at least for a long period of time. I mean, they're not great this year, but they're fine. And for them to almost come back on you and to win in your building. Tuscaloosa is supposed to be the house of horrors, kind of similar to like the Patriots for so long, the house of horrors for a team to kind of come in. But I think just Alabama, just as a team this year, yeah, I don't see them making the college football playoff. I just think that there's a lot more teams now, Nick, in the college football overall ranking that are just ascending a lot more. Look at a team, for instance, like Oregon, a team like Texas. Those are some teams that maybe in the past couple of years, they maybe weren't as good. Notre Dame, even. Notre Dame, I know for a fact, it's obviously had that moments of like going up so close yet so far. But yeah, Alabama, they're 15th right now. They would have to have a ton of stuff to go right from
Yeah,
now until the end of the season for them to get in.
yeah,
That's pretty much what
Alabama.
they're right now.
I mean, Notre Dame is almost certainly a playoff team this year.
Yeah.
Especially from the way USC has been playing. We're not going to have time to get into USC and everything, but it looks like
Yeah.
Notre Dame is probably going to beat USC. And every week that loss to Northern Illinois makes less and less sense. It seems like. Georgia, just want to briefly talk about this. Georgia ended up killing Texas. Kirby Smart took the disrespect personally. I guess nobody's better at pulling that than Kirby Smart when he's doubted. I guess the only team he loses to is Alabama. This Georgia team is very good, even though they've certainly taken a step back, especially on offense this year. I don't know how much of this game you watched because it was on.
I did.
Did you see what happened? Now,
Yeah, I
assume
did.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I think all in all, it was a complete domination.
No. I know that.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened? You know what I'm talking about?
You might have to explain to me exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll explain it.
I thought you were talking about in terms of what happened in the game. I'm like, yeah, sure.
Not necessarily just what transpired on the field. Well, part of it is. Did you see that call? They called it a pass. They called it a hold, a defensive holding on an interception that Texas got that they brought back into the red zone. There was an interception that the Texas defender had, and he ran it all the way back to Georgia's red zone. And it was not a hold at all. It was a really, really bad call. It was a bad call.
Like the ticky-tack.
Yeah, it was like something that you would see in the Jets-Bills game. And what happened was they called it the pass. They called the hold, and a bunch of Texas fans were very upset. So they were throwing a bunch of bottles onto the field.
Okay, yeah,
You know
I did see that.
right?
I did see that part.
did hear
Yeah,
about
because
this, I'm sure.
I saw Steve Sarkisian go all the way down to the end zone and telling people in the stand to like stop, and it was obviously bad professionalism, this and that, which of course I understand, but I didn't remember in terms of the cause for that to happen. So
Yeah,
now that
that's
makes sense.
why it happened. And then you know what they did? They reversed it. The officiating in college football is terrible. First of all, I think the right thing was to reverse it in a sense. I feel that way because the call was just so bad. The flip side is I get the other side of the argument, which is like, all right, what kind of precedent does this set? Does that mean that the home team could just throw a bunch of things on the field to get calls reversed? Like, are you now incentivizing that?
It's almost like karma for like you could have actually gotten the call your way, but instead you decided to make a massive fit about it, and now we're just going to keep on going with the call we wanted to give.
Yeah, I mean, it was a terrible call. It was, and it didn't matter anyway because Georgia ended up winning by 2 scores anyway. It didn't matter anyway. But I mean, the officiating in college football this year has been terrible. The officiating has been terrible. You cannot make. I mean, it's bad enough to make that call, but then to reverse it when it's not reviewable. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. That's a bit of a problem.
Yep.
Especially when it was caused by, or arguably at least caused by fans throwing things on the field. Yeah, that's a big problem. I do want to get into my unnecessary wagers segment.
Okay.
So here it is. Hold on. I got it. I got my parlay right here. It's mostly NFL. Hold on. So here it is. Vikings -3 at the Rams. Lions -11. The Lions, they might be the best team in the NFL right now. Even though Aiden Hutchinson got hurt, I think the Lions could be the best team in the NFL. They look like they're probably the best team in the NFC from what we've seen. The Jets money line against the Patriots. I'm not taking the spread. The Cardinals against the Dolphins at the Dolphins money line. I really like the Cardinals this game. I've said many cases the Cardinals may not be a good team, but they're not that bad. I've said like they're not that bad. And the Dolphins are bad, really bad. Commanders +2.5 against the Bears. I was surprised by this. I was surprised by this.
I am
too. The Bears, I thought the Bears, the Commanders, they've looked great. I am really surprised the Commanders are actually getting points at home.
It typically never happens with them unless you're playing the Panthers, which, the Panthers are an awful team, so you're getting 9.5.
The Panthers are getting, that's the Panthers. And Aaron Judge to hit 1 home run in the Yankees-Dodgers game. That's all parlay.
Oh, wow, okay.
They don't usually hit.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Judge 1 home run. I mean, if you're talking the whole series, yeah, I'm hitting that for sure. The Cardinals-Dolphins game, like you mentioned, Cardinals, I think, aren't as bad as people make them out to be. They got a really good running game. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been fantastic with them. And the Dolphins, even if Tua somehow did come back, I know there's obviously the rumors about it, like, they're just not in sync. Mike McDaniel's taking a people. I don't know if people have kind of talked about this, but Mike McDaniel's taken a massive step back this year. And I don't know if it's maybe
it's because he lost his quarterback. What is he going to do?
True.
There's nothing he could do.
True,
it's
but
like
in terms
Saleh last year, you couldn't last year they couldn't really fire Saleh because he didn't have a quarterback. It wouldn't have been fair.
True. I just what pretty much people have been saying and stuff, like McDaniel's doing just a lot of, even with Tua's playing a girl in the year, that McDaniel's doing a lot of conservative type of calls that he just didn't do beforehand.
Yeah.
And I just don't know, maybe in terms of that kind of being a certain case. So that's pretty much why. I mean, Tua, obviously they're much better situation, but even when he was playing earlier on, McDaniel just for some odd reason his play calling was very conservative, because it wasn't beforehand for some odd reason. So, and then what was some of your other ones too? I mean, the Lions were was it the spread
Lions -11 against the Titans.
Against the Titans. People were saying the 9.5 for the Bills against the Titans. I took that, by the way. That was my lock of the week. I hit that. I think that the Lions honestly hit that. I'm not a big fan of the Titans at all. I'm not a big fan of their quarterback situation whatsoever. And their defense is what it is. I mean, you'll be able to hold on for maybe a little bit like yesterday against the Bills. The Bills were down early on this game, and then you look at the final score and you would have thought that they were in control the whole entire time. So, I mean, the Lions have a very explosive offense too. They got 2 really good running backs in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and Jared Goff is now turned into an overall quarterback they can trust in week in, week out. Remember, maybe if you asked me that like 4 or 5 years ago, Jared Goff being a trustable quarterback, I would have called you crazy. And of course, you beat him, of course, in that Super Bowl. He only scored 3 points, but now he's like in a certain situation now where he's been fantastic. And one thing about Jared Goff, which I've loved about, is he's letting guys of his playmakers make plays and make plays after the catch too. Raymond, for instance, yesterday, St. Brown. So it's incredible what that team's been doing, and I think that they're going to. I'm not going to say wipe the Titans like the Bills did, but I think that they could definitely take that 11 points for sure. And then the Patriots Jets game, right? The Jets are laying 7.5.
Yeah. Well, I only took the money line because I don't know if I could trust the Jets to cover the 7.5.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of your case, I'll probably go with you guys for the money line. It's just because we're just not a good team. I know that our defense isn't great. I mean, if let me just say this, Nick, and this is really for kind of for me on the other side, at least for the ball for 20 years. But if Aaron Rodgers and that offense can't get themselves right against this Patriots defense, which just gave up like 25 plus points from a Jacksonville offense, which isn't good at all, then you should be looking at yourself and being like, oh boy. Because I mean, you should be able to definitely take that money line for sure. I know it's in Gillette Stadium, but I just think that with our defense, it's not been good. I'll talk about that on Football Forecasts coming this week. So you should be able to take that, either the spread or the money line, definitely for the Jets. So that's my unnecessary wagers is those, unless I miss one.
You're not making an unnecessary wager like I am. All right, so that is my unnecessary wager of the day. Of the week. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. This is Moving the Goalposts. You can find us at MTGP ETB on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and Moving the Goalposts on Facebook. Follow at ETB Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart, Ben at Ben Kruse 144. That's the show today. We'll see you guys next week.